Hello everyone, my name is Lior Harunian, and today I want to make a presentation discussing how systemic racism created a racial wealth gap for Black Americans. A system, not an accident. The racial wealth gap today. The racial wealth gap between Black and white Americans continues to be a large and persistent issue in the United States. In 2022, the median white household held over 6 times more wealth than the median Black household, according to the NCRC. Wealth includes generational assets such as home ownership, investments, and savings, making it not just about current income, and showing how this is a generational struggle. This struggle did not come from individual choices, but a symptom of a system and policies that have restricted Black Americans' ability to build generational wealth. The historic roots of wealth inequality. The racial wealth gap doesn't come from individual choices, but a system that has historically excluded Black Americans from economic opportunities after emancipation. After the abolition of slavery, Black Americans were still denied the opportunities that white Americans had, through policies such as black codes, redlining, and the Homestead Act. These policies restricted access to land ownership, fair employment, and financial resources that would have helped in the accumulation of wealth. While white families could accumulate generational wealth through property and government support, Black families were denied these resources, with the government even actively preventing them from creating wealth. While Black Americans have made strides towards equality and better access to education and employment opportunities, the history of systemic racism still affects them today. And on the side over here, I have a picture of the Black Laws of 1807, which were laws placed in Ohio, which limited African Americans' ability to find employment and to own land. Redlining and its effects on African Americans. Redlining was a government-backed housing practice from the 20th century where the Homeowners Loan Corporation labeled neighborhoods that had a large population of African Americans as high risk for loans. This would lead to African Americans being prevented from buying homes as they weren't eligible to receive mortgages or loans to buy these homes and develop their communities. Redlining had long-term effects on the Black community, as the practice would lead to low home ownership, underfunded schools, and less potential to build wealth. While redlining was outlawed, the effects of these are still seen today, with previous redlining zones having higher poverty rates and more crime. The effects have been proven by the Wealth Inequality Project, which claimed that formerly redlined areas have 30 to 40% lower home values than non-redlined areas. The Black Codes and Jim Crow. Black Codes were a set of laws passed in Southern states after the Civil War and the abolition of slavery. These laws limited many aspects of African American lives, such as their ability to own property, jobs, and own guns. These laws would eventually be overturned by the federal government during the Reconstruction era, however, which would lead to their replacement, Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws created racial segregation through separate schools, bathrooms, and even water fountain. These laws would be legitimized in the court case Plessy v. Ferguson, which upheld Jim Crow laws due to being separate but equal. However, Black designated areas were not equal as they were deliberately underfunded, poorly maintained, and denied investments due to redlining. While these policies would be overturned in Brown v. Board of Education, the long-term economic and social impact of these laws would continue to see in the modern racial wealth gap. And then on the side over here, I have a picture of white and colored water fountains showing segregation between two races. Mass incarceration and the war on drugs. In the later half of the 20th century, mass incarceration expanded rapidly as African Americans were targeted by police and criminal justice policies. Black Americans were sent to prison at significantly higher rates than white Americans, even though they had similar crime rates. This would be exacerbated by the war on drugs, which imposed harsh prison sentences for drug use, which would specifically target Black communities. The CIA would also flood Black communities with drugs like crack, which allowed for further incarceration. The policies would lead to single-parent households, less Black Americans in the workforce, and continue to enforce economic instabilities. Many of these laws are still in place today, as mass incarceration is still an issue in many communities. How systemic policies still affect Black Americans today. Although many of the policies discussed, such as Black Codes, Jim Crow laws, and redlining, have been overturned, their effects are still seen today. These systems that denied Black Americans access to land ownership, employment, and education have affected Black Americans' ability to create wealth. Since wealth is often passed down through generations, Black Americans are still affected by these conditions, leading to less economic security and fewer employment or educational opportunities. This shows that racial wealth gap is a result of historic system inequality rather than individual choices of African Americans. Conclusion. The racial wealth gap in the United States is a product of historical systems and policies that denied Black Americans access to economic and social opportunities rather than personal decisions of Black Americans. These policies, which range from mass incarceration and redlining to Jim Crow laws and black codes, systemically restricted access to stable jobs, housing, and education. Although many of these policies have been overturned, their effects continue to shape wealth and opportunity today. Through generational disparities, we must recognize the historic systems that cause inequality, as it is essential to change our current system and to create change that can help address the effects. These are my citations. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and please be welcome to do your own research to get a better understanding of these issues. Thank you.